Hey folks, welcome back to Fixing My Faith. My name is Vern, and today we're digging into a question most Jehovah's Witnesses never ask. Why is all the literature free? If you ask a Jehovah's Witness, they say, well, it's because we have a loving organization. It's because we're the truth. It's because we're the ones that are distributing this spiritual food. And Jesus said it's free. Have you ever asked that question? If you have, I'd appreciate hearing your comments. So this is a question most Jehovah's Witnesses don't ask. Why is all their literature free? But you know the answer they give? It's out of love. But the real reason has nothing to do with love and everything to do with the Supreme Court case involving Jimmy Swaggart. So let's break this down. Jehovah's Witnesses are taught that their global preaching work is supported by voluntary donations. No collection at meetings, no charge at the door, just faith, right? Well, not exactly. That's the story that they tell, but it's not the full truth. So let's take a look at this. Back in the late 80s, the televangelist Jimmy Swaggart, he ran into legal problems over the sales tax. The state of California said if you're selling religious books or tapes, even if you call it donations, you owe tax. Well, he fought it, and in 1989, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, yes, selling religious literature, even for suggested donations, is taxable. So that shook the entire religious publishing world, and guess who was paying close attention? The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. You might remember this. Back in my day, I came into the organization back in the 80s, and right inside the magazine it said suggested price. And they had a price list for all the literature. You went to the literature counter, you had to pull out your wallet, and there was a lot of cash handling in the Kingdom Hall. And this silently went away after this Supreme Court. We're going to take a look at this and see who and what on this subject. But it was suddenly, right after that court decision, boom, in the 1990, the Watchtower shifted its policy. No more fixed prices, no more selling. Everything became free, with a strong encouragement to donate. This wasn't a spiritual revelation, folks. This wasn't. It was a legal maneuver to avoid getting hit with the same kind of tax liability that Jimmy Swaggart got hit with. By switching to donations only, they avoided being classified as a retail operation. That let them keep their tax exemption status and continue printing millions of magazines without paying sales tax. But here's the kicker. They never told the members why. They wrapped it all up in spiritual language like this is new understanding or Jehovah's direction. But behind the scenes, it was purge, damage control. So when the witnesses tell you it's out of love that they're giving you these free magazines, they don't realize this whole free literature thing started because of a court ruling about money. The leadership saw the writing on the wall and adjusted quietly to protect their assets. So the truth is, Jehovah's Witnesses didn't stop selling literature because of love. They stopped because the government was about to start taxing them like any other business. And to this day, they kept that truth hidden from the people doing the actual work, the door knockers, the pioneers, the faithful, who believed it was all part of Jehovah's arrangement. If you found this revealing, give the video a like, drop a comment, and please consider subscribing to the channel. Let's keep uncovering the facts, one video at a time. Thanks for watching, and if you stay tuned, I am going to give you the receipts for everything I said. We'll see you later, and keep living your life with love. Bye for now. We'd like to take a moment and thank Watchtower for bringing this article to us. So here's the receipts for what we've just discussed today. Watchtower, actually, I couldn't find this, but they had it. Right here, the Jimmy Swaggart lawsuit, the court things, right from the court. Here, I'll see if I can find it for you here. I think this is some of it. There, I got it pulled up here. The Supreme Court of the United States, Jimmy Swaggart, and I'm just going to remove my face here just for a moment. It was stamped June 22nd, 1989. So this was right when Watchtower changed all of its policies. Let's take a quick look. Okay, the first article that Watchtower highlighted was the 1990 Kingdom Ministry. And remember, the Kingdom Ministries is where we got a lot of our instructions on how we used to do our Kingdom Ministry. So here it is. This is the literature right here. At the end of February 1990, it was explained that the magazines and the literature will be provided to the publishers and to the interested public on a complete donation basis, that is, without asking or suggesting that a specific contribution be made as a precondition to receiving an item. And when the literature is offered, voluntary donations will be accepted to support the worldwide work of publishing the good news. We have faith that Jehovah will bless this arrangement, and they say compare Matthew. So if you remember, at the time, we used to have demonstrations. You'd get up and we had to rethink our whole ministry, because up until that point, we always asked for a donation, 25 or 50 cents, whatever the magazines were worth at the time. Now, the next article they have is from a Kingdom Ministry 1991, and let's highlight what they want. Okay, so this is again a Kingdom Ministry a year later, and here's what they're saying. Our simplified literature distribution arrangement. The simplified arrangement of distributing literature without charge has now been in effect for 1 year. Has this arrangement proved successful? Field service reports revealed increased placements in all categories. Literally millions of persons are being given the opportunity to come and take life's water free. So you see how this really worked in, folks, to their campaign of being generous, being loving, take life's water free. Oh, the dog's after something. Oh well, that's life. She's back now. Okay, so you remember in the Kingdom Ministry here, it goes on to say, so they said at the beginning here, oh, it all worked out great. And they said there's always a however, because you remember at the time, they were worried about people going through too much literature and people just ordering tons of literature. It was free. So here's what they're saying. However, we are not obligated, nor is it our desire to hand out literature indiscriminately to just any person who will accept it. Just as we wisely use our own material goods, each publisher has the responsibility to make wise use of the literature he or she receives without charge from the society through the local congregation. That the society makes its literature available to publishers without charge certainly does not mean that no cost is incurred in this production and distribution. All should especially appreciate the value of our literature in helping honest-hearted persons in their quest for accurate knowledge concerning Jehovah God. So it goes on to talk about in this article how do they do the literature without charge, and how they support it and so on and so forth. So here's what they say here. However, small donations from sincerely interested and appreciative persons that we meet in the field ministry are appreciated. So they're not engaged in public fundraising, they're saying. But they really put an emphasis on donations. Now let's carry on and see what else they say. They say what our donations accomplish. They say it's appropriate that we be prepared to explain and briefly and clearly how our worldwide Bible educational work is supported by voluntary donations. So all funds received are used to defray the enormous expenses incurred in accomplishing the kingdom preaching work in this modern era. In addition to producing literature for worldwide distribution, the Society maintains branch offices, Bethels, ministerial, missionary schools, missions, traveling overseers, literature distribution centers, and numerous other support services necessary for accomplishing this assignment that Jesus gave his disciples. So they're really going on to milk this free thing. It's because they didn't want to be taxed. They're not telling anybody that. It's because of money. Because they'd be charging if it didn't go to court. If Jimmy Swaggart didn't lose, or if he had won, whatever. That was the pivotal. So now they found that by voluntary donations, they're actually making more money. Did you know that? Yes. Back in the 80s, they were getting more money in donations because we had a separate box. It was a literature box, literature donations. That's what it was for. It reminded everyone that went to the counter that this stuff had a cost. So they did a lot of kingdom ministries on this. Let's go to the next article and see what it brings out. Now, the next article that was posted under Watching Watchtower was how is it all financed by these are all Jehovah's Witness articles, folks, right off their website. Chapter 21, this is a Proclaimer's book. If you all remember that, it was the big green books. There was 2 of them, I believe, and it's kind of all the history of all of them. So it's talking about, it is obvious that the work carried on by Jehovah's Witnesses requires money. Building kingdom halls, assembly halls, branch offices, factories, Bethel homes. It all involves money, and the more is needed to maintain them. And expenses are also incurred in publishing and distributing literature for Bible study. How is it all financed? So they go on here, seats are free, no collection, and they start quoting some of the early stuff that Rutherford and Russell, but they kind of skim through that. And Russell he did a lot for money if you do the research on. So the Proclaimers they try to make it look like these guys were doing it all voluntarily. It was all based on donations. But you read some of the old stuff. Russell got some big checks. People would put 40 grand right in his pocket. And there's all kinds of illustrations on that. Now they're really milking this again in the yearbooks. You remember in the days we used to get yearbooks. Well, another factor, this is back in 2001, and they're really milking it. It was 1990 that they made the donation, the arrangement. Well, 10, 11 years later, they're saying another factor in reaching more people with the good news has been the simplified literature distribution arrangement. Jehovah has blessed the faith shown by his servants in this manner. The voluntary donation arrangement is explained to people, but no charge is made for the literature. As of January 2000, that arrangement was extended to all lands where it was not already in operation. So I guess this tells us they had 11 years to play with this in perhaps Canada, the US, and maybe some other countries. And they had the donation arrangement, and it made more money. So why not extend it to all the other lands 11 years later? Because you can't get sued in Africa for the Supreme Court of the U.S. saying a certain thing. But Jehovah's Witnesses, they want to be unified all over the earth. And so this it took them 11 years to figure that one out. This is a clip from the Los Angeles Times. Back in 1990, they set up, put an article out, a really long article. I read the whole thing. Witnesses won't set prices for publications. And right there, you won't see this in any of the literature I just read you, but right here in the Times, they nailed it. Prompted by a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision upholding state sales tax on religious items and books, Jehovah's Witnesses have instructed their 817,000 U.S. members not to suggest any price for books and magazines they offer door to door. Jehovah's Witnesses, known for their doomsday predictions and doorway persistence, will still seek donations, but will no longer ask 25 cents for each copy of the Wake and Watchtower magazines, or a specific dollar amount for their books. The step by the Brooklyn-based Christian sect, it's interesting how they call them a sect back then, right in the New York Times, was taken to eliminate a possible premise for taxation, but it brings economic uncertainty onto one of the largest religious publishing houses in the country, the Watchtower, largest religious publishing company in the country. Imagine the money rolling in. We're going to take a look at that in a second, actually. And as is formally known, publishes 35.8 million Bibles and books and brochures back in '89, and double its 1988 output. So they doubled over 1 year, in 1 year, after they went free. This is interesting, folks. In around there, 1989, they doubled when they went free. The magazines publish an average of 11 million copies weekly. From business standpoint, it looks like the fiscal suicide, said this guy. So this other guy says, I suspect they will get more money by not setting a price. Have you thought of it that way? Well, it's just donation. What do you want to donate? A couple of nice magazines. And they started really going color, heavy on the color. And people would give $1. They were only 25 cents, but people would give a loonie, like here in Canada, a loonie. People just pick up some pocket change. If you asked for some donations, talked about the donation thing, most people would have a loonie. But the magazines were only 25 or 50 cents. So they were making money. And anyways, I'm not going to read the whole article, but we'll go to the next article. Yeah, Jimmy Swaggart, he was quite the TV evangelist. I did some research on him and how he went through the Supreme Court. And once it's set in the Supreme Court, well, then they start looking at all the religions to tax them, because they're pulling in money from people, right? So Swaggart, he made the headlines in the U.S. Supreme Court, and that was a game changer. So a lot of people want to know the governing body. Well, these are the guys that make the change. They have an article on that. And I want to end up with the governing body and how they run things. They run the whole world now. They've changed. They keep making changes. And it's a money-making conglomeration, if I said that right. And here's why. All we have to do is take a look at the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Canada. This is Charity Intelligence Canada. I don't know if they have it in the U.S. and other countries, but it's here in Canada. And if you're a charity organization, you got to be part of this program so that people can research you. And when you look at the research, the website's saying don't donate. It's not saying it like that, but it's basically saying it. It says Watchtower is a 0-star charity with low demonstrated impact. This charity does not have a website and reports very little about its 30 million program, so they're not public about it. Watchtower has a large funding reserve and is not financially transparent. That's what they're saying. You can't find the information. So this here says Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, head office in Canada. Here, of its total disbursement, this is just Canada, folks. 2.6 million went to the JW congregation support, which helps other JW build buildings and so forth. And according to the financial statement, they spent 9.6 million to support charitable programs in other countries. So it didn't help anybody here in Canada. And according to the Watchtower's filing with the Tax Revenue Canada here, it spent 10.9 million on international programs and activities. What's that all about? You know, like as a member, I was a 30-year member of this organization. I knew none of this. I would have liked to know more of where the money went. We've often asked, and they just have a box that said worldwide work. You know, you've got to trust Jehovah. But where does the money go? How does it help people? Well, here it's going on to say 8.7 million went to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York. And then they talk about how many million copies of the Watchtower was printed for 33.3 million here in Canada, 41 million Bible-based tracts. It goes on to give a kind of a list. And the results and impact, that's what you want to know, right, if you're going to donate. Here, Charity Intelligence has evaluated Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Canada, and they found that the charity to have a low demonstrated impact per dollar. They're doing nothing. They got a 0-star rating. They get an F, an X. To me, you know, in school, that was you gotta go back a year. You failed. Watchtower failed here, and anyways, you can go down and look. I'll pin this for you guys. There's a little bit of a spreadsheet on here too, and I was going down the whole spreadsheet. They got you add 3 zeros to the spreadsheet, by the way, but they got 95.238 million in donations here in Canada. In donations, that's what they reported to our Revenue Canada. Goods in kind, they got 5 million goods in kind. I don't know what that means. Goods in kind. 5.7 million. They got 500,000 here in investment income. So they have investments and it's making an income. Oh. My dog, we're kind of new up in this area, so the dog, when she sees someone moving, she's an old farm dog. Not that old, 6 years old, but she's used to guarding the whole farm. She owns a farm, so we move into this kind of camping area, resort, or whatever we're at, whatever you call it. It's not a campsite. It's a private resort area that you can pull in, like we got a park model, and you've seen in the video. But she thinks it's all her park now, so we have to retrain her that her park is only the yard. So it's interesting and it's a lot of fun. But anyways, this Watchtower stuff can drive you crazy. You know, you had a little bit to look at the spreadsheet there if you're in the accounting. You know, they're even saying, I was reading through here, that it's just there's no, you know, I don't know how good they did this, but Watchtower's making a lot of money, 96.3 million in funding reserves. And it's one of the largest in the world. That's what I'm finding out. It's all about money when it comes down to the Watchtower. So why did they change to a donation program? They didn't tell their people in any of the articles that had to do with the Supreme Court ruling and Jimmy Swaggart and the laws changing in the U.S. That would have been the honest answer. And so we had to go to a donation thing. We're going to try it out here, and if it works, we'll go all over the world with it. You see, that's kind of a cool way of doing it, just being upfront and honest and transparent with people. But no, they put it into this big Jehovah thing, and Jehovah willing, and Jehovah's blessing us, and now we're going to go all over the world because this is what, you know, you receive free, you give free. You know, they just use this to make themselves look great. And to me, that's a little bit of a fraud. Well, that's all I have for you today, folks. Thanks again for watching. Keep living your life with love, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.